Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here, of course. Okay, so what we are going to do here is two things. First of all, actually to shed some light about Hamas conduct in Gaza, ideologically speaking, with regard to the indoctrination, educational system stuff in the recent 20 years. We have to take note that Hamas actually was dealing with that in kind of a very independent way, because Israel was out of Gaza since 2005. And the second thing is just to get an idea of how all these things were poured kind of into the 7th of October atrocities, what was the impact, and how we should read that, not only in the let us say Israel-Hamas layer, but also when it comes to the broader Middle East. So just to get kind of an idea about what we are talking about in terms of geography, in terms of proportion. Of course, when we are dealing with the Middle East today, it would be basically two main axes, one of which is being run by Iran. I just take the liberty to say that on Thursday I am going to talk about Iran, the octopus, so to speak, and the way actually the Iranian camp is being organized these days in the Middle East. And there is another axis where we can find Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Egypt, and others. So basically we'll leave it to the geopolitical panorama to be dealt with on Thursday. But Hamas is basically found here. This is kind of very, very small slice of territory, less than 400 kilometers square. And this is what we get: two territorial slices, which are meant by Palestinians to a large extent. In Gaza, we don't have any Jewish settlement. As I said before, Israel evacuated itself from Gaza 20 years ago. And it happens to be a grave mistake. Of course, in retrospective, we are dealing with that way because the whole southern gate, Gaza's actually access to the world, was not blocked. Actually, the whole industry of tunnels and stuff was to be nurtured 20 years in kind of a very systematic way through Egypt. And Egypt turned a blind eye to that in spite of having actually peace agreement with Israel. In any case, just to give you some introductory remarks, this is of course the West Bank. In Arabic, الضفة الغربية. And this is basically, of course, the West Bank of River Jordan. East Bank is Kingdom of Jordan. Basically, when we do talk about the West Bank, nowadays actually the ruler sits here. The capital city of this region is Ramallah, and this is Palestinian Authority, which is governed mainly, or the core is activists of the Fatah movement. This is Judea, basically. This is Samaria. I can just point to places like Jenin, Nablus, Tulkarem, Qalqilia, who are basically independent, much away from the control of Ramallah. And here we have a cocktail of many, many radical groups who are trying to challenge Israel in kind of a third intifada phenomenon or stuff. But you have to just get the idea that way. This is Israel, of course. In it you can find either Judea and Samaria, West Bank, it doesn't matter. This is part and parcel of the whole thing. Gaza is here, bordering Egypt and Israel. And once we have here sort of so-called, I would say, secular Palestinians, let's just move, for the sake of our discussion, to Hamas. Hamas is kind of a Palestinian group or movement that happens to translate Palestinian or explain Palestinian nationalism through Islamic symbols. So this is, let's put it back, religious dimension of Palestinian nationalism. It's not to say that Palestinian nationalism is not to be found in Hamas ideology, definitely yes, but it has to be measured and understood in line with religious lens. Of course, this is Gaza, this is Rafah. Just take a note about that. Half of Rafah is Palestinian, Gazan, half of Rafah is Egyptian, and this is actually the story where we're in. Okay? So, it would be definitely accurate to say that between Hamas and Fatah, they are at loggerheads, to say the least, but there is a huge or a bunch of conflicts that basically are originated from the different fact that these guys do understand reality by using religious motives, and the others are having kind of a different way to look at things. This is not to say that Hamas actually is, based on anti-Israelism and Fatah or PLO is doing the opposite, but there are differences, in the Middle East. Every state and society can be polarized in line with religious and secularism as a general term. And of course, when we come to analyze that, we will find different attitudes as to how to just deal with problems and how to just deal with things. Okay, what can we tell ourselves about Hamas? What is Hamas? Hamas is the acronyms of Harakat al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya. So, in Arabic it would be Hamas. Hamas is a word, by the way, that literally can be translated as Antisemitism. The acronyms has meaning, it's a word in Arabic. The words actually stand for Harakat al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya, and Hezbollah, Shi'i though, is also a Muqawama organization. Muqawama is resistance, of course, and this has become something which is part and parcel of their ideology and the way they should steadfast or struggle Israel. Let me just give you some, let's talk about where Hamas was originated from. This is Muslim Brothers. Yes. Egypt, of course, 1928, Hassan al-Banna. I don't know if you are familiar with that, so you would like me to just skip that, and you are familiar with all that? No? Okay. So this is so sorry, I have to, this is the emblem of Muslim Brothers. Let us just translate it into English just to save some time. Allah is our objective. The messenger is our leader. The Quran is our constitution. Jihad is our war, and death for the sake of Allah is our highest hope. This is basically Muslim Brothers. Of course, when they came to exist in 1928, there was a different Middle East. Egypt was ruled by the British, and of course that was a very, very dramatic cry, a challenge to the whole course or path the Middle East was to take from then on. Basically, these guys are from the beginning actually thought that something should be replaced dramatically in the Arab world or the Muslim world. They were very, very, I would say, upset with the performance of many, many Arab leaders that were taken, let me put it in kind of a very blunt way, as Trojan horses of the West, okay? Since the West, from the beginning, was the other or the enemy in their eyes, the whole outlook was to be interpreted or take shape and that kind of a thing. This is it. A year after the establishment of Israel, 1948, Muslim Brothers actually have exported many branches to the region. The first of which, or the second of which, sorry, was that was exported to Gaza. Gaza was part of the Egyptian rule there. Okay? Part and parcel of Egypt. All these Muslim societies, a branch of Muslim societies that were exported by Muslim Brothers to Gaza, were to become 40 years after that, in 1988, what we call Hamas. Okay? Hamas was there in another name until 1988. What his activists were focusing on was da'wah, which is a civilian effort by which to turn young people in Gaza into devoted Muslims. The notion of Hamas then was that you have to work bottom up. Bottom up. If you would like to arrange for a real revolution in the Muslim world, you shouldn't actually deal only with the usurpers, with the incumbent rulers. What you have to do is just to do the bottom up. And basically this is something that happened there. Da'wah was the main thing. With the passage of time, what Hamas has started to bring in is what we call the military arm. The military arm of Hamas is called, this is Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigade, and there was kind of a combination between civilian efforts and military efforts by which to deal with that way. Let me just show you the, this is the emblem of Hamas. You see what I said before about Muslim Brothers is also a slogan that is being actually internalized by Hamas. Look at that. The mosque is in the heart of the emblem, as if to say that I can talk about Palestine, but don't forget, Palestine is a term to be translated only in accordance with Islamic understandings, ordinances, or whatever. Second thing is, of course, the green color, which is very, very typical for Islamic radicalism all over the place. This is Palestine. Many Israelis would say that this is Israel. Exactly. But, for Hamas, this is Palestine. من النهر إلى البحر. From the river to the sea. When ignorant people actually are shouting all over the world, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they do echo Hamas charter. When you say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, you say, in other words, there's no way actually a Zionist or a Jewish Israel could exist. And this is something that we have to bear in mind. For us, this is just part of it. Actually, the other Sunni group, which began as a clandestine organization, was Islamic Jihad. This is Fath Shkaki, physician from Rafah, that was to expel from Egypt, after 1981, the assassination of the then president Anwar Sadat. He came actually to Gaza back with another Gazan, Abdurrahman al-Auda from Jabaliyah refugee camp, and together they created or established in 1981 the Islamic Jihad, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, of course, because we have in Egypt also an Islamic Jihad. This is PIJ. And of course, you see the main motives are there also. But these guys actually were highly inspired by what happened in the Middle East these years, especially the 1979 actually Islamic Revolution in Iran, that was to suggest or offer that you can build up a state that is based solely, I mean the whole prerogative is going to be found in the hands of Shi'i, or let us say religious clerics. This is what they call in Persian Jamhuriya Islami, Islamic Republic, a state which is run solely by those clerics. And the whole notion was to fascinate many Islamists, some of them actually in the Islamic Jihad and others who came to what I would say, create kind of an idea about themselves and established in Gaza Islamic Jihad, a group that from the beginning was basically identifies itself with the annihilation of Israel, Kifah Musallah, armed struggle, and all that stuff. So that was the, let us say, the panoramic view you can get from Gaza in the 80s. Let me just remind you that in 1987 there was an intifada against Israel. This intifada was to strengthen, to bolster Hamas' position in the Palestinian fold. And from then on, actually, what we got there is Hamas very dominant in Gaza. This is, of course, Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigade. This is the military arms of Hamas. Let me just, it's very sporadic what I'm trying to do here, just some introductory remarks by which to have to get the idea. This is not my interpretation. I'm just quoting from the chart of Hamas, okay? Israel will arise and continue to exist until Islam abolishes it, as it abolished what went before. This is Hassan al-Banna, the great leader of Muslim Brothers, actually came. History is very important here. This is why we do argue that history, culture, language, memorization is the most important thing, is the most important stuff when we come to the Middle East. Many deal with geopolitics, and we hold nothing against that. We are doing geopolitics too. How big your army is, what you are coming up when it comes with advanced technology, it's very important. But if you tend to neglect the stuff that says loud and clear in the Middle East, culture matters. Culture matters. If you neglect that kind of dimension, you're going to lag behind. You're going to find yourself actually with misunderstanding day after day, and this is exactly what happened to Israel in 7th of October. What we do see here, this is kind of a publication by Hamas, which adheres to some general principles and policies. I'm trying actually to stick to stuff that we have found there. Okay, these are documents that are not fabricated. This is actually was written by Hamas. Let's just make sure we understand what is written here. Well, the jihad for the sake of liberating Palestine is a personal duty. This is Article 15 of the chart. What does that mean? Personal duty. There are duties, different duties actually. Some of them actually relate to the public, some of them to the individual space. They are individualizing jihad for Palestine. The day enemies steal part, okay, I won't get to that, but this is very important here. ولا بد من ربط قضية فلسطين في أذهان الأجيال المسلمة على أنها قضية دينية. What does that mean? Palestine is a religious stuff, religious problem. Don't talk to me about Palestine while bringing in some universal notions or some secular notions, or some Western notions. This is it. Therefore, what must be done is to instill in the mind of all the Muslims, generations, that the problem of Palestine is religious. And on that basis, it must be dealt with. Now, Hamas controlled Gaza for 20 years. Try to imagine, Israel was not there. Hamas was actually free and independent to foster an educational system in line or in accordance with his beliefs. Try to imagine what the whole generation in Gaza was to be educated by, and then you understand how 7th October atrocities were there. And we've been there. We've been inquiring into this educational system. It's not only that a translation of Mein Kampf into Arabic, of course, was part and parcel of the curricula, but the whole notion of who are the Jews, how you are going to dehumanize them, to treat them as subculture, and then on top of that, to bring in many, many Islamic interpretations, of course twisted, of why actually these guys should be slaughtered. And this is what I would like to say. I mean, this can be achieved now. We can actually provide that. This is what actually Hamas was using, of course, and it is very important, the religiosity of the conflict. And remember, when I am having a conflict with you against a regional background, we turn the conflict into an eternal one. Because if I would actually have a territorial, something that is based on materialism with you, we can come to a compromise. I don't know what the compromise is, but there is a room for a compromise. When it's either or, it's either me or you, this is the result of a religious thinking, of course, religious extremism. I won't say, I won't hold things against Islam, because I can show you that when it comes to United Arab Emirates and normalization, we have the Abrahamic city in Abu Dhabi. I don't know if you have managed to see that, when a synagogue and a church and a mosque are actually being established side by side, and this is kind of an indication that there could be a different narrative when it comes to that. But Hamas would take it to totally another place. Now, Jews and Zionists. Hamas would try actually to, I would say, deceive his audience, especially Westerners, saying that he has nothing against Jews, but only against Zionists. And he goes to explain the Jews for ages were subjects of the Islamic Empire, which is true. I myself, a descendant of Iraqi Jews. My ancestors actually, I guess, left Zion 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, after the demolition of the Temple House. And until 1951, they stayed in Iraq. They, of course, actually were left with nothing and were forced to leave Iraq. But until 1951, I can assure you, they were 100% Iraqis. Jews, but Iraqis. So people are being stripped of their set of identities. But here is the thing, what Hamas is doing by focusing on Zionism is to further elaborate on the notion that Israel that came to exist in 1948 is nothing more than an avant-garde or kind of an advanced base or camp of Western colonialism or imperialism. Basically, this is the disease itself, actually. This is also what Iran would argue. Big Satan, small Satan, all that stuff. I just want to give you some hadith, some traditions, or kind of stories actually being told either by the Prophet or by her companions, Sahaba, which would tell you, and this is, by the way, the stuff which is being learned in the educational textbooks in Gaza for 20 years. There is a hadith which is named Hadith al-Hajar wal-Shajar. What does that mean? It means that when we come to that hadith, if I would have to just the rocks and trees, this is actually what you can find. People, Jews, are people who are basically cowards. This is actually what Islam generally says. They would stand or hide behind the tree or the rock or whatever. And this is what the rocks and trees, while seeing Muslim, would say, "O Muslims, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." It's very, very simplistic, but it's very right to the point. Jews should be, haunted, and they are part of the thing that we have to just understand. The dividing lines between Zionists and Jews in the educational system of Hamas for more than 20 years were blurred. There is a division between Jews and Zionists, I can tell you. I mean, in Israel, there are people who are, define themselves as Zionists, other Orthodox Jews. I mean, we have our problems of our own, actually, and that can be found in abundance, but this is not the thing that we do talk about. But here, Hamas, in order to make sure that when it comes to the generation that he is, that grows up in Gaza in the recent years, this was the case. We are going actually to understand that Jews and Zionists are the same things. At the heart of this lies armed resistance, which is regarded as strategic choice. This, I told you that, and we have to just make sure we have that too. This is 7th of October actually thing. It is called Tufan al-Aqsa in Arabic. This is how the Hamas is naming the 7th of October atrocities. Al-Aqsa flood. Okay, you can say that Ma'arakat Tufan al-Aqsa. And once again, this is kind of a very methodological thing to be noted when it comes to the history of the Middle East, and even when we are dealing with present time. When it comes to the bad guys, and I take the liberty to just name them that way, these are people that could be definitely seen where we stand. You know, what does that mean? 2024. They do behave like regular human beings when it comes to the day-to-day activities. But those guys are having kind of I would say a device in their back of mind which definitely has a link with kind of a different time zone. Different, I would say, verses by which to be inspired to do things. So here is what we think. If we haven't got a clue about this other time zone from which they do glean actually inspiration, when you haven't got a clue about those verses, could be Quran, Hadith, or any other source, where they do glean sort of an inspiration, we are basically a little children that were thrown into a very complicated forest. So this is why actually this is our cry. If we would like actually to play the game in the Middle East, we have to teach Israel how to become, I would say, a defending democracy in the sense of dealing with a more creative manner stuff that Israel is being confronted with in the recent years, because these guys are very sophisticated. They are very cunning and very shrewd students of Iran. And Iranians, in my opinion, Persians seem to be the most clever, actually human being stuff when it comes to the 21st century. But this is what we are trying. Which flood actually they do talk about? Any idea? Noah, definitely. Noah is an Islamic prophet. And the whole session of the flood is there. They do also talk about the story of the spies in Israel. But this is something that they are using back and forth to bolster their warriors while they are doing this assault. There is, listen to that. This is something that I can't elaborate too much on that, but this is the stuff actually that was found in the pockets of Nukhba fighters when they actually were doing their horrendous attack on the Gaza envelope, kibbutzim, and cities. These are ayahs or hadith, verses from Quran or tradition. Basically, you see, this is ayah, hadith. This is, ayah is a verse. Verse. This was on there, and this is something that, I mean, we are living in a post-truth era. You know that? Everybody could come up with what he wants and what she wants, and everybody is selling his own narrative. So, first of which is, what counts is who you are listening to. I don't want to persuade you, but what I'm coming up with is something which is very, very, how should I put it, very deep, entrenched in the Gaza thing that happened in the 7th of October. This is ayah, this is hadith tradition, and this is kalima. You see that? This is, I would say, motivational phrases also. What they are doing there is just to make sure that those guys are coming up with what we need. Listen to that. In a motivational phrases that Al-Qassam brigades, when I'm saying Nukhba is, in Arabic it is elite forces, commando forces of Azad-Din Al-Qassam brigades, to fight and sacrifice tadhiyya. There are also statements intended to increase motivation for killing and slaughtering, for example. Okay? We are people who enjoy drinking blood. And we have learned that no blood is better than that of the Jews. And therefore, we have come to drink the Jewish blood. Of course, Hamas was denying when he saw and confronted the backlash. He tried actually to come up with counter arguments as if this is nothing that has to do with that. But that was found in abundance. إننا قوم نشرب الدماء وأنه بلغنا أنه لا دم أطيب من دم اليهود دم يهود فجئنا لذلك. It's written loud and clear. And when you try to get an idea how human beings, flesh and blood, have managed to do what they did, and I don't want to delve into the atrocities themselves because I don't want you to suffer. Really, I would torture you if I would give you the nitty-gritty details of this carnage. I won't do that. But when somebody actually is being educated and inspired by those things, there is no reason why won't he actually do that kind of a sabotage. This is, by the way, this phrase was said by Khalid ibn al-Walid. Who is Khalid ibn al-Walid? Can you just elaborate on him? Just a minute. He's a great commander, yeah. So when he was fighting the Byzantines, yes, but when he was fighting in the Byzantines, this is exactly what he said about them. So what actually had been done here is to take his motto about the Byzantines and to implement that on the Jews. And this is the stuff actually those guys were being fed up with. Sheikh Abdullah Azzam, I guess you know him. If not, actually this is the mentor of Osama bin Laden in Al-Qaeda. Abdullah Azzam is a Palestinian of Palestinian origin. He is also one of the guys who did inspire Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Well, I don't want to say that, but history is written in blood. Since it's written exclusively in blood, the Hall of Fame is being exclusively out of skulls. He talks about skulls, mounds of bodies, and body parts. This is exactly what happened in the 7th of October. Sorry for putting it that way, but it is there. This is Muhammad al-Daif. Muhammad al-Daif is one of the architects of the Al-Qassam brigades. It seems that this guy actually passed away 2 weeks ago. We don't have a full confirmation about that, but this is he together with Rafi' Salama, the commander of the brigade of Rafah. Those guys actually were seen together everywhere, and also that same day. And since the attack was very, very harsh, it seems safe to assume that Muhammad al-Daif, his name is Muhammad Dayar al-Masri. Al-Daif is kind of a term that was to depict the simple fact that this guy actually hasn't slept at the same place in a row for 2 days. He has to be guessed every other day or every day in order to make sure that he is not being caught up. But what he came up with that is that thing of, this is your day, ya Jama'ah. We are going actually to, kill them, slaughter them. We have to take Palestine back, and I won't actually waste your time with that. Justification of killing of civilians. This is another thing which is very, very important. Hamas is coming up with the notion that he basically deals with soldiers only, not civilians. But when you ask Hamas what is a civilian in Israel, civilian is a soldier either now or in the future or in the past, because everybody is being conscripted. So we do talk about civilians or soldiers in potentia when they are young. We are talking about soldiers when they are elders because they were soldiers and they are still in the reserve. And of course the others. So the notion is that we don't deal with civilians because there are no civilians in Israel. All of them are soldiers. This is something that was brought in from another great leader of Sunni Islam, which was heading the Fatawi Council and dealt with the way actually Islamic law should be interpreted in order to adjust itself to the time being. This is Al-Qaradawi, was Al-Qaradawi, and this is العمليات الاستشهادية التي تقوم بها فصائل المقاومة الفلسطينية لمقاومة الاحتلال الصهيوني، فهي لا تدخل في دائرة الإرهاب. You cannot turn our activities in Palestine under the roof of Irhab. Irhab means terrorism. Why? We are fighting and slaughtering soldiers, either now or soldiers in potentia. As I said before, all of them are soldiers. This is another publication by Hamas, Shura Council. It is called basically Al-Dirasat Li-Fatawi Wal-Rasail. This is something which is very, very important. I just show you that. Zionist society is an armed society. Mujtama' Musallah, which was established based on land theft, desecration of holy places, blood, and most of the youths, boys and girls, are conscripted. Okay? So try to imagine how this stuff is being digested day by day for 20 years in kind of a very, very well arranged educational system. This is another thing which deals with that. It is called fiqh al-jihad wal-aman. So the law of jihad. This is one thing that should be added to. What I try to tell you is that Hamas actually got kind of an inspiration 3 years ago. It was May 2021 when there was a war with Hamas that was named Guardian of the Wall. Guardian of the Wall actually was to bring into the Muqawama organizations the notion that if you would like to fight Israel, you should hit the center of gravity. Center of gravity is Al-Aqsa Mosque. You are familiar with the story of Al-Aqsa, yeah? You know why it is so sacred when it comes to Islam. This is the third sacred spot when it comes to Islam. The notion is that Prophet Muhammad was to do the Isra and Mi'raj, to climb up to the seven heavens, actually to get his revelation. And this is why Al-Aqsa is so instrumental here. If I am taking Palestine as a spot to be translated and interpreted religiously, Al-Aqsa would be the main thing. You know, Jews actually say in Hebrew, Na'alena et Yerushalayim al rosh simchateinu. Jerusalem is always on top of our joy and life. This is exactly, sarcastically put, what Hamas is doing. If I would have a fuss around Al-Aqsa, if I would make Muslims and Arabs do feel that Al-Aqsa is in danger, Al-Aqsa fi khatar, this is maybe the most populous hashtag I could come up with when it comes to that. This would create kind of a reality unheard of many, many fronts be united under the notion of let's rescue Al-Aqsa. Inqazu Al-Aqsa. We have to rescue Al-Aqsa. This is the multi-front platform that Israel was to get in 2021 and to a large extent on the 7th of October. So what happened for Israel is that from now on, Israel will have to deal with a multi-frontal arena. And we do talk about so many things. We'll deal with that on Thursday with your permission. But just to show you that, or is that, this is Hebrew, sorry for that. Temple Mount, center of gravity. Religiosity of the conflict, don't forget. These guys has managed actually to take what Haj Amin al-Husseini was to say on the 30s, 100 years ago. Al-Aqsa fi khatar. Al-Aqsa is under sort of threat. And this by itself has become, as I said before, the most populous hashtag by which to, ignite and call upon many, many young Muslims to do some active resistance. This is not a national conflict. This is religious one, as I said before, Islam versus Judaism, Jews versus Muslims. Of course, anti-Semitism here is to be found in abundance. whether we are talking about classic anti-Semitism or modern anti-Semitism. This is definitely the stuff that you can find in the media, educational stuff, that Hamas is coming. You know, Zionists are greedy. Zionists are the perpetrators of the 9/11 atrocities. You know, this is actually being said as kind of a solid fact, with almost no kind of counter argument. People were taking that as kind of a truth. I myself actually was astonished when I lectured in, it was I think in Rome, in the headquarters of NATO. There were Arab officers there, and I lectured in front of them. And you know, in the Q&A, one of them actually, I think Jordanian, I don't remember quite well, just asked me, everybody knows who is the culprit behind the 9/11 atrocities. And I said, yes, everybody knows it is Al-Qaeda. No. Who created Al-Qaeda? That's the main question. One way or the other, it would come to the notion that Al-Qaeda was a Trojan horse that was created by the Zionist Christianity axis or something like that. Crusaders and Jews, this is the most accurate term. If you go to Afghanistan, you can find that Americans supported Al-Qaeda in order to better deal with the Soviets in Afghanistan. But these things are being dealt with in kind of a very manipulative way, as to just argue that Jews are every way in accordance with very, very, I would say, notions that are typical for the Elders of Zion protocols and stuff like that. Okay? Okay. This is Corona. This is what actually... 10 minutes? Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm just... Virus al-akhtar al-bashariyah. This is the most dangerous virus for human beings. But you can say actually what the idea behind it. The problem is, and this is once again, what we are trying to provide our policymakers, students, the public at large in Israel, Westerners or Europeans, is that you have to get an idea on the way these guys actually are thinking about reality. When Israel was to get out of Lebanon, it was 24 years ago. Israel has held sort of a security zone there from 1985 to 2015 years. The security zone was there in the south of Lebanon. Today it is inside Israel. The whole south actually is being cut off by Hezbollah and other proxies. But this is what this guy actually was to say. It is called the Beit al-Aknabut. Beit al-Aknabut is the cobweb theory of the Israeli society. What these guys, and it doesn't matter whether you accept that or not. It doesn't matter what you think about that. This is how they think. And when they get kind of an indication from reality, they read it in the way that would substantiate that, they would come to the fore. What is Israel in their mind? It is a very well advanced society when it comes to military technology, when it comes to everything. Israel is very, very well equipped militarily speaking. What does Hamas have? Does Hamas have a plane? An airplane? No. A tank, maybe? What do you think? Does Hamas have a tank? No. So here's the thing. How this thing can happen, that this resistance group manages to force the most able army or almighty army regarding, in Middle Eastern terms, to leave Gaza. Well, I can tell you that there are many arguments that could be taken that would say, at least at the time, that get out of Gaza, get out of Lebanon was something that actually Israeli society was really in the need of, because it is very pricey in terms of soldiers' life, in terms of everything. So that was, for that time, actually something that Israel thought would be very instrumental. And let me actually mention the sayings of the then Prime Minister Ehud Barak, 2000, after Israel actually evacuated Lebanon, and he was asked, what if? What if is a question which is very tricky in the Middle East. I can think of something which is very interesting about what if. When I was in London actually gleaning some stuff for my PhD study, I happened to meet kind of a telegram that was sent from, you know that, Charles, I guess, but don't tell them what the story is. It was sent from Foreign Office in London to Baghdad, February 1921. A month before Britain is going to announce the establishment of independent Iraq. And Sir Wilson, I forgot his first name, the sort of high commissioner that in Iraq was to get this telegram, Arnold Wilson. And I was to spend 4 days digging in and trying to find out what the answer from Baghdad, Arnold Wilson, was to become to the telegram of what if. What if the guy actually from the Foreign Office asked some what if questions. What are we going to do if Sunnis would go for Shiites, Arab for Kurds, or Assyrians, or whatever, Christians, when it comes to the religious stuff. And I found it 4 days after. I almost let it go because it took a lot of time and energy and money. I was just a young student. And I found it, thanks God. It was very interesting, actually, what Arnold Wilson was to say to that clerk in the public or the Foreign Office in London. Thank you for the note, of course. Very British. How very observant of you. Still, very British. But in the end of the day, he said, rest assured, this won't happen here. What won't happen here? Sunnah and Shia, Arab and Kurds, and all that stuff. Why? We shall teach them. And this is a sort of a Shakespearean term. To let bygone be bygone. There's no need for Sunnah and Shia from now on. No need for Kurds and Arabs. All of us are going to be Iraqis. Well, the only pure Iraqis you can find nowadays is in my city, actually used to be Ramat Gan in Israel and Or Yehuda. You have Iraqi Jews who still feel that this was their one-time homeland, and they very like the memories, music and a lot of stuff which has to do with the Iraqi, community. If you happen to come to Israel, Charles, we would invite you to Or Yehuda, where we have a museum of the Jews of Iraq, and this is very interesting to see how for so many years actually Jews have been living in Iraq. But to say the important thing here, Iraq was to become a failed state and ongoing bloodshed, civil wars, and once again, this is something that make us understand. By the way, the Americans were of the opinion in 2003 that when they deposed Saddam Hussein, that they are going actually to have a different Iraq. Don't be that pretentious. This is what history tells us about the Middle East. Be very, very modest, very careful. Don't come up with, jump into conclusions. Many people actually feel that what I'm saying here, and even in Israel, is very controversial. But I hate the two words, mainly composed by Americans, which talk about the day after. I heard a lot about the day after in Iraq. I heard a lot about the day after in Afghanistan. I heard a lot about the day after in Libya and in Yemen. And if that's how things look as a result of the day after, let us say, program, well, we shall deal with the day today. I mean, we'll deal with today and then we'll carefully and prudently go to the day after. And think that this is Beit al-Aqnabut. Israel is very strong here, out. But if you are going to put an X-ray into Israel's guts, you would see that. Cobweb. Meaning that they are Westerners. I mean, this is what they think. I don't think so, but I want you to just get their idea. Very, very people who tend to have complaints when things are, don't or go wrong in a way. Complaints against their society or other flanks in society, their government or whatever. Since they are a bunch of immigrants which came from different countries and parts of the world, they tend to be very, very choosy, and if things actually are deteriorating, they would take their luggage and get back to the place where they came from. You say no, they say yes. And this is Beit al-Aqnabut. This is the cobweb. Israelis are very strong from the out. But when it comes to the guts, when it comes to the real stuff, they are very weak. What the real stuff is, this is what Hamas thinks and Hezbollah thinks he has and Israel hasn't got. Sabr, patience, and sumud. Sumud is steadfastness. I will stay on. Even if he is much stronger than me, the longer I go, the more steadfast I am, the better chances are that I will, in the end, and it is not to set a date. There is no now. This is a very Western world. Give me now what I want. Here, time is very, very amorphic. Oh, gosh, what is that? Okay. Israel تصارع نفسها. This is something that says that Israel is going, the cobweb is going to destroy itself from the in, not from the out. What we have to do is just to steadfast and be ready for that.